Danielle Smith for Common Sense Calgary. We are interviewing candidates for Calgary City Council in the upcoming municipal campaign. And joining me now is your Ward 11 candidate, Mike Jamieson. Mike, thanks so much for being with me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Danielle.
So let's begin by telling us why it is you decided to run for municipal council.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to say this is an honor. So thank you very much, for this opportunity. You're sort of a legend, and this is a big deal for me anyways.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah, so I believe in this city, and the city believed in me when I was younger. And as a father, as a foster parent, as somebody that's in the business community, I see the effects of bad policy. I see the effects of overspending, and I, really care about the future, not only for myself, but for my children. And I really think that it's a driving force for me that I think we need some change in how we're doing things, how we're operating, because I want a better Calgary. I want a safer Calgary. I want beautiful communities and all that. But it's in my opinion, I just think we can do a lot better for what we're paying. And I have this drive inside me that, I want to be part of this change, for good. And that's really what drives me.
Okay.
So
let's get some specifics about some of the work that you did in the past. So tell us why it is that your business experience would lend itself to you being a good council member. What did you used to do, or what do you do?
So I have currently a full-time job, and I'm one of the lucky Calgarians that still have that right now. And so what I'm planning to do is leaving my job. So I work in the exciting world of commercial construction. And within Calgary. So my position and my specialty is I manage multi-million-dollar projects. I know what a budget is. I know what efficiency looks like. I know what waste looks like. And to be honest with you, waste drives me crazy. So when I see that in City Hall, I'm like, oh man, just to simplify, we really need to run City Hall like I would run my house or a small business. You have to have the attitude that you got to stop spending money that you don't have. And it's a principle that you teach your children. It's a principle that is common sense in a household, but seem to be not so much in City Hall.
All right, let me ask you, you put two words together that I think will surprise some people when you were talking about the commercial construction in Calgary. I don't know that a lot of people would think of that as being exciting right now, because there's been so much vacancy in downtown Calgary. So I want to take this in two pieces. Number one, let's talk about the positive first. What do you see that has you so optimistic about commercial construction?
Well, people, business is still existing in Calgary. It might not be booming the way it was, and trust me, I want it to be booming like that again. But it still exists, and there's still lots going on. So it's optimistic that way. There's still businesses are still investing in their properties. They're still doing renovations. They're still building new. Maybe not as much investment as 10 years ago for sure, but there's still a lot of people that have jobs and working. The unemployment is a big thing, and when I'm at the doors, it's a lot. I would say now maybe every 1 in 30 doors I go to is an unemployed person. And it is pretty scary, and it's heartbreaking when you hear people's stories. But I'm a pretty optimistic person because I'm principle driven, and I think that if you do things the right way and you have core principles, that things have a chance of working out.
So let's
or have
then talk
trust
about
people.
let's talk about your experience then, and maybe you've got some thoughts on what needs to happen to revitalize downtown Calgary. So the last time I had updated stats, there's vacancy that is probably in the order of 100 to 140,000 employees that could be accommodated. So it's a huge hole in downtown. Do you have some thoughts on how that should be resolved?
Well, I would say, if you want to get people coming back downtown, if you want to get business, like there could be, upward to 35% vacancy rate, something like that, right? Maybe even close to 40. Then you need to make it, you need to incentivize business. You need to incentivize. So, an idea I would have is, yeah, make it cheaper, or even an incentive for businesses that decide to come back downtown. So if you decide to come back downtown, bring your employees back, maybe you get free parking. Maybe you. I mean, that's okay. The parking issue is a big issue. It's really expensive, and it's a huge deterrent. I know for me, if somebody asks me to go for lunch or I have a meeting, I typically say, can we meet outside of downtown? Just because it's irritating, and a lot of people feel that way. And I was just downtown last week, around 17th Avenue, and it was around lunchtime, and I mean it looked dead. I'm like, this is not how I remember this. This is not how this should be. And so that's one way. So if you know incentivize business, so maybe make it cheaper, maybe cut the taxes, like do something that for dollars and cents. I mean, that's how business works.
Let me ask you about one of the approach. I'll get to the taxes in just a sec, but let me ask you about the approach that they have taken through Calgary Economic Development. They had $100 million fund using to give direct supports to attract companies. Do you support that type of approach?
Yeah, I absolutely do, because I mean, we need to give business some reason to be interested in this. And business really is, it's all about what makes sense financially for the most part. Especially right now when businesses are struggling to survive, and every single dollar counts. I know this. I'm in the world, in the construction business world, and things are things are tough. Budgets are tight. I'm forced to be very efficient with the resources that I have, because there's not an endless supply. It's it makes you really responsible. It makes you pay attention to what's really important. And so for business, and this is why I think it's important to have some new people, maybe with some business, a little bit of business background or life experience, that knows how things work. That you gotta give a reason. There has to be a reason for a business or people to go downtown. So yeah, if you make it cheaper, if you then that would right away get people's attention. And I mean, okay, so public transit, so C-trains. That's another way. People don't necessarily have to drive downtown, but maybe making parking at C-trains a little bit cheaper. More people might decide to do it. I know this is obviously maybe after the COVID ends, and you have this. I mean, right now, I don't know much people that want to go downtown right now or want to drive, ride the C-trains right now, because of everything going on. But maybe when that's over, we can really have a discussion that, hey, maybe lower the fares a little bit, maybe. But I just know the cost of parking is a huge deterrent, and if you made that cheaper, I bet you a lot of people would come downtown for lunch more. They would, come out to spend money. That's a small, starter. You got to go for the low lying fruit first, and that's just getting people there. And then once you're there, well, then they're more likely to start putting back into the economy.
Okay, let's talk a bit, because you mentioned the issue of taxes. So I want to understand how important that is to the people in your ward. We know that we've seen this tax shift because of downtown Holloway now. That's put an extra burden on small businesses, and we've heard that has increased their taxes by sometimes 2 or 3 times over the last couple of years. So now they're talking about doing a tax shift to residential. So do you support that move? And if you don't, then how would you balance between residential and commercial tax rates?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do support I do support a bit of a balanced approach. You know, you can't smother and kill your small business. It's the lifeline that holds the city together. It's not big corporations; it's small businesses, that make an economy thrive. And the tax burden is so high on some of these that it's just completely unrealistic to think that it's feasible and it will continue like that for a long time. So, and it's frustrating because no, I mean, very few people, like out of thousands I've talked to, nobody wants their property taxes to continually going up because affordability is a huge issue in Calgary right now. A lot of people say, I can't afford to live here anymore. I'm moving. I mean, believe it or not, there's got to be about 100 people now that I've spoken to that said that they're moving this year, and I said before October 18th. they say yeah, probably, and I said, well, if you want to move, maybe November 18th, that would be out. But as a joke to them, but they, yeah, I mean, it's just they can't afford it, and the burden. I mean, something like close to 100% tax hike that we've had, property tax hike in the last around 8 years, and over 7% now, since the pandemic. Calgarians are sick of it. Like I know the cliche term, lower taxes, but I think they just maybe even would be happy with a tax freeze. Like, how about our taxes just stay where they are for a few years so we can cope? A lot of families, Daniel, are not coping with this continuing hike. So yeah, I mean, so I think you need a balance. You need a balance because if you just say, yeah, you know what, residents, you're number one, and we're just gonna bankrupt small business. Well, there are people that employ the residents. So it is connected, and you know what? Jobs in the economy is the number one thing that gets brought up to me.
Mike, can I just pause you for a minute? If you can sort of like finish the answer, and then I can ask you another question, because I don't want to sort of jump in and cut you off, but we've got like you're covering 5 or 6 questions in one answer. So do you mind if I just sort of jump in and just steer the conversation in a different direction here? Let's we'll cut this part out. I just want to give you some of that advice because I've been there's a little bit of a delay in our camera, and if I cut you off when I think you've answered the question, I'll look like I'm constantly jumping on you. So my advice, I know you're nervous, and that's fine, but it would just be easier if you know what, when you feel like you've said what you want to say, stop. Because then that's my cue to ask you another question. I've got like 24 question areas to get to, and it'll just be more conversational if we do it that way. So you're doing great. Your answers are wonderful. That's just my own, it's just my advice to you. So
what's the secret to not being nervous?
Oh, you know what? Think, instead of saying, I got to think of another thing to say, if you've just said your piece, just stop. And then I'll be able to, then we'll be able to have the next comment, because you put a bunch of things on the table there, including affordability, including the economy. So let me just sort of go back to one. And I want to talk to you about affordability, because there's a number of questions around affordability, especially related to the guidebook for great communities. And so has that been controversial in your areas? Have you been hearing about it from constituents?
Yeah, it's extremely controversial. Nobody knew about it. Like February, nobody even knew what this was, even into March. It wasn't, I think, until, Jeremy Farkas and some other councillors that really brought it to the light to Calgarians, and people started talking about it. The guidebook for a great community negatively affects Ward 11 quite a bit. And I see that because I haven't encountered one person that's actually for it, that lives in the community. When you're in community, older communities, right, built before the 1970s, like, Willow Park, Maple Ridge, and then up in Haysboro, some of these areas, those people really, they live there because they appreciate their single family home. It's what they like. It's what they've invested in. You know, it's their probably part of their retirement, and they like the privacy that comes along with that. It's a I mean, it's not cheap when you spend sometimes your life savings on a house, and you have that. So the idea that this could potentially affect their property value, the idea that potentially a duplex or a fourplex could go up next to them or across the street from them, is nobody wants that at all. So sometimes I ask them, well, what would you do differently, or how would you, I mean, and they say, well, new communities. They say stick the this kind of vision to new communities. Don't touch the beautiful legacy communities that we have. We don't want that. So that is, Daniel, what I've heard 100% of the time. I have not even spoken to one person that's for it. So that.
Then let me ask you about the big tension that we've seen in the development community over the last 10 years or so. There is this, I think, continued pressure from politicians and administration. They want to densify and build up, and they're reluctant to approve new greenfield development. What would your approach be?
Well, greenfield construction brings a lot of jobs and a lot of economic growth to the economy. So, I mean, the idea of killing all greenfield construction, I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, densifying older communities doesn't make any sense either, in my opinion. So, I think that the guidebook for a greater community and the communities that it's targeting is not the solution, and it's not what I don't think what Calgarians in Ward 11 want at all.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk. We've talked a bit about taxes and what you do there. Let's talk about the other side of the ledger. Let's talk about spending. Do you think the city of Calgary is spending too much, too little, or have they got it about right?
No, I think they're spending way too much.
What would you do to cut?
I think there's a ton of fat that can be cut, and when I say that, I care about frontline jobs. That's and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there's a lot of I just pet projects, things that the city's part of, that one of the things that gets brought to me a lot is why doesn't council focus on what they should be doing? Instead of the million things that they're not, that are costing money, taking time, and that's, whether that's true or not, that's a perception that's out there. And so I really just to simplify, if the council really should be involved in public safety, infrastructure, and repairing potholes, and to simplify it, like, that should be a councillor's job. And if you can do that really well, then then you have the ability to do other things. But
let's talk a bit, if we could, about the operating side before we get to the capital side, because there's police, there's fire, there has been dispatch for EMS, garbage collection. So there's a number of services that they're still providing. Do you have some thoughts on how to bring wages under control? Because wages are about 50% of what the city spends, and it has been increasing. What would be your thoughts there to get that under control?
Well, I think whether it's the public sector, the private sector, wages have to match a current economy, and that's what I think. In the private sector, it happens out of a necessity to stay alive, but it doesn't seem like it's reflected the same way in the public sector. And I've heard the argument a lot that says, well, public employees need to be paid the amount they are, and because you're going to lose them all to the private sector. And I probably would agree with that maybe back in 2005, when things were booming, and when downtown was full, and but it's not the case anymore. And when the same equivalent job, is I think something like over 1/3 of city employees make over $100,000 a year, and in the private sector, I mean that's probably down to 70 or 80,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that I'm all for prosperity, and I'm all for people having a good life, good family. I have a family. You know what? You need money to do things, but I just think it has to be fair, and I think the issue is that the Calgarians in the private sector don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
And
Some people characterize this as a revenue problem, and there have been proposals over the years to find ways to bring in new revenue with new taxes. Would you support that?
Can you repeat that?
Some people, particularly you hear it in the public service, saying that it's a revenue problem. And so there have been proposals over the years for new taxes for the city of Calgary through things like the charter, the city charter. There was a report last year that talked about a whole range of new taxes and user fees. Do you support that approach?
No, I don't support more taxes at all. Most people can't afford it.
Okay, let's go on to the capital side of the ledger. We have a few big ticket items. One in particular I want to get your opinion on, which is the Green Line LRT. It started off as a project funded by all three levels of government. It was going to be 40 kilometers. It was going to go to the deep south and deep north. It was only going to cost $4.5 billion. Now it's going to cost more than that. It's only going to be $20 billion. And the transportation minister has said he doesn't support the project as it is because it doesn't connect into the existing LRT system. What would you do there?
You know what? I think out of all the priorities, that Calgarians need right now, I think personally the Green Line is a low priority. So it's something that I don't think that we have money for right now at any level of government. And it's something that right now is definitely not necessary.
So I'm hearing you say cancel it, but would you do anything in its place? Would you say put it on hold indefinitely? Would you want to see a bus rapid transit? Would you want to see a portion of it built? Give me an idea of what you'd want to do.
Yeah. So no, I'm not going to say the word cancel. I'm going to say let's put it on hold for a few years. Let's wait, because if things in the economy, turn back around for Calgary in the next couple of years, well, if people start, COVID affects us a lot too, because, so many people are just working from home and not taking public transit anymore. So the need, I don't think is there right now. So for huge capital investment, yes, okay, it is shovels in the ground, shovels ready, and it does equal jobs, and that is what I do support. But in terms of like the area that I would support, I would say the only area, if so right now I'm like, no, we need to wait. But if things change and provincial government has more money, the city has more money, I would say the south leg, so down 52nd Street to the new South Hospital, is the only part of it that I think makes sense. You have a natural corridor. There's no tunneling required. It touches in Ward 11 and through Quarry Park. So that's the only phase that I could see myself ever supporting.
Okay, let me talk to you about some of the other capital projects that were approved. They came forward to the council, and it was against the advice of the CFO to approve all four of them. They said that only one of them should be approved because of financial restraints. So let me go through these, and you can tell me which one you would have chosen. The Event Center with Calgary Flames, the BMO Center expansion for new convention space, the Arts Commons transformation, and the Foothills Fieldhouse. If you had to choose only one of those projects, which one would you have chosen?
What was the second one?
The BMO Center expansion, that's the expansion for new convention center space.
Yeah, that's the one that I would support out of all.
And why?
Well, because I think that's the one that you can probably get the best bang for your buck. I mean, right now conventions are kind of almost not existent anymore. But back when they discussed it, I mean, a city that has an upgraded facility that can handle large conventions typically will have a ton of revenue that comes with that. In terms of, you get thousands of people coming to the city, hotels, all the investment that comes along with that. So that's something that I could see the city truly benefiting, and the downtown core truly benefiting from, an elite style convention center. That's something that I see value in. In terms of the Flames arena, hey, go Flames, go! I love the Flames, but the city doesn't have the money for this right now, and it's and it's funny how things change, because a few years ago, I think a lot of people were maybe they could see the value of that, and yeah, Calgary has the oldest arena in the NHL, and but there's no way that we could consider this now. I mean, if there's a way that the Flames could let the city out of this, and because there's not one taxpayer that will say, yes, please raise my taxes more so we can build this arena. Right now, it's not possible.
All right, you talked a bit about core services for the city. So there's a few that I want to run by you and see what your approach would be. So first of all, on the issue of police, there was a defund police campaign in the last year, and what was asked for was to take a portion of the police budget and move it to support mental health and addictions response with a different type of responder. Do you support that movement?
So I don't like the phrase defund the police, and no, I don't support defunding our police in any way. In fact, when you have unemployment levels that are at all-time high, there's always a correlation between unemployment and crime. And at this time, I think that the police need probably more resources than they ever have. And so I think that this idea that somehow we're going to have safer communities by cutting police budget, I just don't think it makes any sense. Now, I really do support initiatives for mental health and for addiction. Everybody has family members and friends in their lives that have struggled with addictions, and I have family and friends, same as anybody else, but so I have a little bit of a soft spot when it comes to this sort of thing, because it's most people with an addiction problem, it's mental illness, and their mental health is connected, and usually trauma from their past or whatever. If that's not dealt with, with professional help, they'll continually be in the cycle of reusing and being back on the street and back in rehabs, and it's a pretty vicious cycle. And that's one area that I think we need to do better in. And
okay. Let me ask you a connected question. Did you take a position on the city scrap over the centralization of EMS Dispatch? On the one hand, the province was saying that it would be a cost savings. On the other hand, the city was worried that it would reduce response time. What do you think?
So, I don't have a strong opinion on this one.
Okay, that's fine.
But I have spoken to 3 different EMS workers in Ward 11 at the doors, and they feel quite betrayed by the city right now. So they say, what, we're hardworking frontline people, and you're basically telling us that we suck at our job. And even if that's not true, that's how they feel, and they say it's not fair. And so I'm not sure yet, but that's what I'm hearing at the doors. Okay,
let me ask you about the issue of snow removal. It became a big issue in December with the big dump that took weeks to clear. So what did your ward tell you, and do you have some solutions for how that could be avoided in future?
Furious is the tone. Furious, Danielle. Huge issue. It's other than jobs and the economy, it's been the biggest single issue since January, I guess, or since spring came.
And so what do you think needs to be done about that?
People want
people want this snow dealt with. That they want it. So, like, there's some things that they're willing to pay taxes on, and some things that they aren't, or some things that they feel if they're getting value, they'll pay for. And a lot of people were stuck for sometimes 12 days. They couldn't leave their house. I spoke to many people. It's not just a few. It's like hundreds of people, especially in cul-de-sacs and these type of areas that a snowplow would never come to. I mean, they were stuck. And it's really interesting though. The silver lining about it is communities in different areas have come together, and the communities start helping each other. So neighbors are helping neighbors. I think through adversity is how a community is built. And there's been a lot of friendships that I've realized after talking to this house and then keep going. The stories that you hear that you're like, well, this is a great place that you live. Like, this is a great little area that you live because you're all taking care of each other.
Yeah.
And so that's the positive to that.
Let me ask you about the role of the council member, because there is this balance that you have. On the one hand, you're elected to represent people and make decisions. On the other half, on the other hand, you have to decide when you put something to referenda. So there's two issues that were debated at council: the issue of 40-kilometer-per-hour speed limits and the issue of fluoride. So the first one, they made the decision to lower, and the second one is going to the people. Do you think they made the right call?
No, I think both should go to the people.
Why?
Well, because the majority of people that I've spoken to are not in favor of spending millions of dollars to change, speed limit signs and all the cost and work involved in that. They don't want the speed limit. So there's a few things. One, they don't want it decreased because they all say, well, it's going to take longer to get to work, longer in traffic. It's just going to create more speed traps, and that sort of thing. And then the other point is people don't believe it actually makes anything safer. So they don't believe that dropping it to 40 kilometers an hour from 50 does any good at all. So what I would say to answer that is we need a more localized approach. If you have a problem intersection, that there's been an actual collision, a pedestrian hit, or there's multiple near misses, then you need to take each community and really a localized approach to roads and intersections. Having this, I've never been a fan of blanket ideas. Let's just blanket everything and let no, that to me that never makes sense. It never is best for the taxpayer. It never is best for the communities. And yeah, so localized approach is the answer.
Okay, let me ask one last question here, again, about the role of the council member. There'll be times that the city administration puts forward a recommendation they say is best for the city as a whole, but your constituents want you to vote the opposite way. What would you do?
Constituents, 100% of the time.
And why is that?
Because that's why they have elected me. That's why I'm running, is to represent them. And that's actually why I'm choosing municipal politics, is because there's no parties. There's no party whip. There's no you have to do it a certain way. No, I can vote whatever way is best for Ward 11. And if Ward 11 doesn't like something, and the majority of Ward 11 doesn't like it, and there's tools and different ideas I have to try to get that valuable data right away on key issues, then I'm not going to support it at all, because it's not what the people want. And that's why I'm elected. That's why you voted me. So that's my job, is to represent you. And if I'm not doing that, well then I shouldn't be there.
All right. Thanks so much for your time today. I sure appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much. It's been an honor. I appreciate coming to you.
You got it. That is your Ward 11 candidate, Mike Jamieson.
Have a nice day.
Have a nice day too.